Morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first part of lecture 3. In today's lecture, I'm going to talk about basic modification tools, and that's one of the lectures for our AutoCAD basics. In today's lecture, I'm going to talk about the basic concepts that's required to modify and to control the drawing inside AutoCAD easily. So I'm going to explain actually a couple of commands basically. I'm going to talk about object snap, move and rotates, trim and extend, fillet and chamfer, and then offset, mirror, rotate, scale, and then stretch, and the last concept is about grips. Those are basically the tools required to modify and control and enhance and increase your speed in work. Basically, or the most important one to have a look at now is object snap. You can activate object snap menu by hit OS on your keyboard, and you can find that there's several types of object snap available for you. You might need to understand that you can control the whole active snap or turning of the snaps, activating or deactivating, by hitting on F3. So hitting on F3 by accident will cause this toggle to be off, and it should be function F3 in my laptop, and that, as you can see, it's off. When this is the main command off, even if you tick all of those and then you hit OK, nothing will happen and AutoCAD will not sense the end of the objects. Then in this case, to activate it, you need to hit F3 on your keyboard and now you can see that it starts sensing the snapping in the objects, as you can see now. So again, OS or object snap, don't forget to turn on the object snap toggle. Then you can come here and select all or clear all. It depends on what you want. Basically, the most important ones are endpoint, which is sense the ends of any points, midpoint, and which sense, as the name goes, to the center, or to the mid of any object, specifically the lines. You might need to understand that you will be really highly required to remember those shapes and what they actually represent without remembering them, especially, probably those three. Center is self-explained. Geometry center usually goes with more like snapping the geometrical center point of a polyline or a 2D polyline, or more geometrical, other type of geometrical or 3D centering. Nodes are for point. Actually, quadrant are, when you activate it, you're going to sense those 4 point or 4 quadrant of any circle. That's the quadrant. Node are just for sensing points if you have them in the drawing. Intersection is gonna, as the name goes, when any lines or any two lines intersect with each other. Insertion for block. Perpendicular, again, as the name, tangent, nearest. And then the apparent intersection. Apparent intersection, I think, when you have more than one line in a different levels, or more of 3D space work. Parallel, again, as the name goes, it's allowed to draw lines parallel to other lines. So probably we need to explain a little bit more about nearest and extension. Let's have a look of the overall. I'll just uncheck nearest, will be a safe choice actually, and then I'll leave the whole rest on. I'll hit OK, and then I will have one of the common mistake is I saw not actually the student doing, is they try to sense the snapping without command, so they technically doesn't work like that. So you need to put L space, and then when you come to the end of the line, you can see the snapping activated. That's the end, that's the mid, as you can see, and that's the end again. You can sense the quadrant center, that's the center, that's the quadrant, as you can see. So it's allow you to draw a line based on those quadrants, or to run through the center of the object, as you can see, like that. Midpoint is self-explained. I can draw a line like that from the mid, or a line from the end, or actually connecting ends like this. Now another useful thing is to understand that you have the ability to extend lines in a perpendicular in an imaginary condition, like depending on this guy here, extension. So physically, if you have two lines like that, they don't meet, I can sense or I can draw based on their hypothetical intersection point without the need to actual filleting or extend those lines. So if I just put the mouse at the end of this line and then I remove it, you see this green tick to identify that AutoCAD extension is now active. I can draw based on the extension of that line to a specific distance, so I can write it's 100 or 200 now in the keyboard, and I can start a point far away from the end or to the extension of the end of that line by 150, let's say, like that. See, so this point that I created is 150 on the extension of that line. Another use of the extension is again to hover above that line without touching it, without clicking it, move your hand away and then do the same, hover above the end of that line and then move your hand. You see the ticks. Now I can draw at this point, or I can draw at this point, which is their imaginary intersection point. As you can see, similar thing here, hover here and then move, hover then and move, and then you can move your hand and you can see they can make, you can actually meet their hypothetical intersection, or just like a horizontal hypothetical intersection, depend on what actually you want. So intersection, probably it's another command that sends the the intersection of any object. Probably if I need to turn off the F8, so you can see I draw something from the intersection of that line. Intersection, it might be an important command or important part of the object snap, and you might need also to remember their symbol, which is this crossing thing, this one. Insertion, sorry, it's for blocks. We're going to see that later on when we study blocks. Perpendicular, it's nice, so it's allow you to draw any line anywhere, and then you guide your hand to the to any line, and when you see this perpendicular icon, that means when you click, the angle created here is a 90 degree. So that might be useful, and that works well with circles too. So that's the line perpendicular on this circle from any point you want toward the circle here, exactly, and you're going to find the exact perpendicular to it. Tangent also can sense that this is a tangent point for any circle, so that's the tangent, as you can see, and it's also useful in our work. What else? Parallel might be a little bit elusive, so you need an inclined line like that. And then when you want to draw a line based on a point anywhere here in the space, just hover above the line. When you see this icon, the parallel one, remove your hand and try to get as close as to the parallel. Now you see, now that's a line parallel to the original line that I hover above previously, and when I click, I determine the length of that line, but this guy is actually 100% parallel to that guy. The last option probably I need to explain is nearest, and I highly advise you to turn that off, because it might corrupt or annoy your accuracy when you work, because it sends any point on the line, making it harder to reach the midpoint or harder to reach the endpoint, especially when you work in a zoom out cases and you see there's lots of point in the middle. Probably you need it when you draw something freely on a surface of a point, but again, you can draw that far away, and then even if you doesn't want it as a perpendicular, you can just pass that line and then later on trim that, as you can see. Anyway, we're gonna come back to trim very close or very soon. Now if I go object snap again, that's basically the main thing that I wanted to talk about. And one last thing is that one of the most important hidden object snap is it's a point between two midpoints. So for example, if I want to move all that rectangle away and I need to select its center, I need to draw a line and then pick the midpoint of that line. But again, you can go like M space for move, and then you select the object in space, and again we're going to have to explain the move in a shorter pace. But have a look, I will hit shift continuously and then right click in my mouse, and then I get this, which is a temporary snapping system, so you can turn all off, and then whenever you need endpoint, you can, for only one time, and I can select it. Anyway, my point is midpoint here, mid between 2 points. It's like a secret option here, so I can tell AutoCAD that I need to find a point located between this one, that's the first, and that's the second. And you see, now I can select this rectangle from its center. It's really useful when you work with columns, when you draw them by a rectangle command, and then you want to specify the center. So sometimes you just draw a line, and then select that object. You select that object from the midpoint, and that's another way to do it. Or just move the space, select the object space, and then shift and right click, and then pick this from the mid between 2 points and specify that and that, without the need to draw this construction line and then deleting it. That's the base. That's basically the first object snapping. That's the base actually for our basic modification tools. Now, for the most common and most frequently used command are move and copy. So now, from now on, we're going to talk about like twins of command, and move and commands are very similar. Twin command, and as the names really easily explain to you, move is just going to move the object from one place, from the old place to the new place, and the copy is just like doing the same thing, just make a copy of that. Very similar to copy and paste and cut and paste in Windows, and again both of them actually need almost the same sequence of work. So I will go sequence of steps. So for move, you can just hit M, that's the hotkey or the shortcut, M space of course, and then AutoCAD will ask you for selecting an object, and you can read whatever the cursor actually say the dynamic input here, and you can notice that the cursor changed to rectangle or small square, which is indicate that you need to select. So I'm going to select that object, I'm going to hit space, and now it's actually need the base point, which is where you're going to hold that moving object from. So let's say I'm going to hold it from the top quadrant like this. It's exactly as if you draw an imaginary line. That's the start point of the imaginary line, and then I'm going to ask you where you want to send it. So I can just use the ortho, and like you see this dashed line for 0 degree, and then you can say like 500 that way, like to the east. You can just again select object and then space. I will specify that anywhere I want. You can use this method that we talked about recently, like relative 100 with an angle of 35 or 34, and then hit space. It's just like moving the object with a specific polar system. Copy, on the other hand, the shortcut is C all and then space. Same sequence, so I'm going to select the object and then hit space. Now it's going to ask me for the base point. I'm going to select the top quadrant, and then you have to specify the distance or the second point, and you're going to click, and it's going to create a copy with allowing you actually to create more than one copy wherever you want to go. So that's copy, and that's move. Basically like a twin commands, they do almost the same thing. Trim and extend, another twin. So again, they are almost the opposite to each other, and they have almost basically the same structure. Both of them can work with one space system or two space system. So let's go and try trim. Trim actually just chop a part of an object based on its intersection with other objects. So again, if this guy does not interact with this circle, so you shouldn't do trim for it. So you need some types of overlap or intersection between objects in order to do the trim. Anyhow, TR space to activate the command. So if I need to use the easy method, actually I just hit 2 spaces instead of 1. So let me explain the TR 2 spaces first, which is easier. So TR and then 2 spaces, space, space. Now it's actually telling AutoCAD that whatever you gonna click, it's the piece we're gonna delete, disregarding where is the cutting knife or where is the cutting edges. So whatever you click, it will be cut, as you can see. So I can cut, 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 you know. Or I can use the window system like that, or crossing system like this. You can see it's easier for me, and I can do this job with a couple of seconds. So with this method, tr space space, you are actually going to cut, select and cut, whatever the method you use. That's an easy, and you can use that whenever you feel that there is less, you know, need to be really accurate, and there is no, you know, like narrow corner that you can run around. Another method that works well with the tr space is a sub command called fence, and you can find it here down. So if you hit F space, now you can cut like by drawing this line, and if you see that when I click, it's turning gray. That means it's actually sensing it and it's indicating for you what to trim. If you have many lines, like 100 in each case, you might notice that AutoCAD needs some extra time to do this business. You know, like if you cut without seeing it goes gray, some of them might not be cut. See, that's a fast way to do that. Again, F space, you might need to, you know, like see it's very beautiful. And, you know, you can get a quick result out of that. Now here, where if you do a fence F space, it's gonna really painful, and if you're gonna miss a little bit, you know, like you're gonna mess up the whole thing. So probably that's the time where you need to use the more accurate way in using trim, which is TR1 space. Now when you use TR1 space, note that AutoCAD will ask you to select objects, and here we actually need to use the cutting object, or like a cutting knife, which is a group of objects that you will select, and as a guideline where you will cut from, or as a relation to it. So they are a cutting knife. You use them to cut, but you will never cut them themselves. So let's say I want to cut anything between anything outside and inside those circles. So basically you need to select that guy and that guy, space, finished selecting the cutting knife. So now it asks you to select object or part of object to trim. Now that's mean whatever you're gonna cut, it will actually, you will select it as and cut and remove from the thing. If you cut those circles, as you can see, they will not be affected, and that's really great. So you can feel safe whenever you cut, except this thing, because, you know, like actually I cut between those lines, which is also can be cut actually, but the circles themselves will not be affected. Now if I do this, you see now all of them cut, and only the trimmed part or the small part between those lines actually remained. So using this method is really great. So use that if you know that you're gonna need this circle to stay, and whatever other thing you're gonna select is actually gonna be removed. So whenever you select the circle by mistake, it will not be cut. So it could be really useful when you have too much objects in the same or located between two curvature object, or with a complicated geometry that actually you don't want to, you know, like damage the walls, that you need something outside or inside hatch or dimension or tiles to be removed without affecting the walls themselves. Extend, so same thing, so I can go EX again, that's the shortcut, double space. So whatever you click, actually you need to select the side toward, so don't select that side, otherwise it's going to go that way. With extend double space, that means extend anything to anything, like this, like that, you see. And again you need to select the edge in order to go that way. If you select this guy, it's going to go to the other side of the circle, as you can see. And again that might be useful, but again if I go EX space and I need to extend those lines to the last line here, now I need to use crossing because I'm fast guy here. Smart way, it isn't a smart way actually, it's very slow way. As you can see, too much unrequired clicks. And the correct method to do that, again, it's EX and then one space. So one space, select the target that you want to extend all object to it without affecting it, and then hit the space, and now you can select this with crossing, and that will finish the job much more easier. Now to other set of or twin of command, which is fillet and chamfer. Fillet is basically allow you to extend and trim any two lines, whether to make a corner that have zero angle of rotation, or you can create a curvature at those ends. So if I hit F space and then R space to specify the radius and accept the default value, I'll just say 0 space, then I can just select this guy, and it's actually going to extend them and meet them together. I can use the same technique, F space. I don't need now to hit R space, 0 space again, because AutoCAD remember actually the last setting of commands, which is technically 0 for radius. So I just need to click here and click here. And in this method, as you might notice, I'll just undo F space. You need actually to click things that are gonna stay. So if I select this guy and this guy, those gonna stay. And again, F space, if I'm gonna say, and it's actually gonna click, this guy and this guy, those parts will stay. So click on the edges or the side that you wanna, stay. If I go F space, R space, and now let's say 10 space, hit space. Now I can select the first line, and I can select the second line, and I notice that the circle has been actually generated for me as a cornered edge between the two. I can go ahead and hit F space, R space, and instead of 10 I said 50, and again click this guy and this guy, and it's gonna create for me a new curve. Now you need to understand something, that you need really to understand the length of the line you're dealing with. So this guy, for example, a 400. So if I go F space, R space, and it's a 400 line, and I just give it a 1000 radius, and then you select this guy, and then you select this guy. Even before you select it, you might notice that AutoCAD is giving you this sign of not acceptable, and it's telling you that the fillet radius is too large. And because most of the time we don't feel to read anything, we're just gonna click, and again you see invalid, fillet radius is too large, invalid is everywhere. And lots of students actually in the exam just freak out. They draw in millimeter, and they or meter, and then they give the radius with millimeter, and then ending up by having a big confusion. The other case they might find it like really annoying is that you don't know again the length of that line is 400, and then you can say F space, R space, and then you're gonna say 0.01. So too small or too big. In a too small case, it looks like it's doing like a cornered, and when you zoom in a couple of thousand times here, you're gonna see that it actually did a fillet, but it's a ways too small to be seen. So be careful of the too big and too small case that we talk about that very much in the previous lectures. It might go the same headache here again and again. So same thing again, there are lines, if they were intersected and they are passing each other, you can give fillet radius like 20, and you can trim them and fillet them and draw arc on the corner at the same time. By the way, fillet is actually one of the most important command that you can use, and the most frequently actually using command that you will use in AutoCAD most of the time. And again, for circles, it might not do anything really interesting. Chamfer, which is like not really a big fan. It's just basically the same function of the fillet. Instead, it can just chopped or create a chopped line. So if I say CHA, that's chamfer, I can go distance, D space, and I give the first distance, let's say 10, the second distance maybe another 10, okay? And then I click the first line, and then I click the second line. You can see that it just basically created meeting the corner with a 10 by 10 chamfered edge. It can do the same thing, CHA here. sorry, CHA, and then remember the previous distance, but again I'm gonna go distance, let go 50, and the other one let's say 20. So I can select that line, I'm gonna trim the thing, creating an X a chamfered by 50 and in Y a chamfered by 20. If you find that any type of useful for you, go ahead and use it. But myself, I'm not really, like a big fan of chamfer. I'm gonna usually go like draw that line and draw that line, the 15, 20, and then connect them and erase them, rather than keeping, sub distance or sub command inside the chamfer itself. Not really a big fan. But anyway, chamfer and fillet, another twin set. Now offset, that's an interesting thing, and again it allows you to draw an object based on a previous one. It's very similar to copy. It's actually look like a copy with a distance, previous distance or a parallel distance in a case of a straight lines only, but not in a case of an enclosed line like a circle or like a rectangle. Let's have a look. So if I go offset and I give it 10 for example, and hit the space, I can select that guy and move it that way, like it needs a distance or a side. So I can select this guy, so I pick this side, I select this guy and I select the side. Let me repeat that for you. So offset, and this time I go 50, select the object and then select the side. Look what actually it's gonna done, and if he goes to the circle on a closed object, as you can see, I select 50 and then I select the side, I select the object, I move my hand. Still remember 50 to the last previous setting. Still working. Now the last thing it tell you, it's too small or cannot be done. With a rectangle, let's do the same thing. If you go inside and it reach a level that will stop, or you can go outside forever until you get bored. Here, it's gonna cause those edges. You're gonna use this command so much, to draw walls or to change the boundary of a building into an external wall. That might be useful for you. Let's just have a look at this. I'll go F space, R space, 0 space, and then I click this guy and this guy, like the command finish, so I have to hit space again. And I don't need to get R space, 0 space again like this. Actually, I don't need to hit F space again, just a space, because AutoCAD remember the last command, fillet, and the last radius for it, which is also 0. So you can go like click and then space and then like click and click, which is sound and it's a little bit boring. So if I go undo and get F space, R space, 0 space, and then before I go ahead, there's an option here called M for multiple, which is gonna keep the fillet active. It's really nice until you do the job done and you say that's it, I don't need it anymore, like this, and then you hit escape. Now you get yourself for your first ugly plan, as you can see here. And it's a good command to work in offset with fillet radius 0 and then multiple, and achieving a nice outlines or plans out of whatever geometry or border line that you has. Mirror, as the name goes, it's MI. They do a mirror copies, and they are not a normal copy, they are mirrored, so just don't confuse. I'll select all object and then hit space. Now it need a line to be drawn, so basically 2 points. If you select the object first line, the line of mirror based on a first point part of the old object like this, and then the second point part of the same object here using endpoints, and you're gonna ask you to erase the source. I'll say no, which is hitting space. Now you get themselves, that the mirrored are actually attached to the line that you draw. If you want a gap between them, select object space and select anywhere, or let's just specify a point if you like, with probably need F8. So it's gonna happen like that. Again, MI space, you can select and go horizontally, or with an angle if you want, if you don't have F8 on. That's mirror. Again, rotate, again RO, very similar, almost the same 2-letter, and then you select the object, hit space, and now it needs the base point. If you need it to rotate around a specific point, it's center, this point, edge, here, let's go here. and I can just move my hand to get 90s. That's most of what we do. If you need it with, you know, ortho, or hit F8 to cancel the ortho option, and you can give it like any click you like, anywhere you like, or just say 45 if you want to get it rotated to the specific angle. Scale, it's really nice, and it allows you to redraw the whole thing. The shortcut is SC, select object and then space. Actually it might need here to ask for a base point, so it's like a reference, so everything will scale down or up based on this. So now we need, actually there is two methods. Either you go giving a scale factor, which is the default method, or you're going to get it a reference. I will explain the reference method, which is really important, but in the next lecture. Let's use the scale factor method. So any number bigger than 1 will cause this object to get bigger. Any number less than 1 will cause the object to go smaller. And if you hit 1, just a waste of time and resources. Nothing gonna be changed. It's gonna stay the same scale. So for 400, if I hit 2, it's gonna, you know, like double the size. You get 800. I'll go and undo SC space and then select object and space. I'll specify this point as a base point, so everything will shrink to this point. And for the scale factor, I'll give 0.5 to get all the size X and Y reduced by to half the space, or to half the dimension. Stretch, one of the best command actually, and it allows you to do both move and stretch, or like extend in the same time. So let's say move and extend. Let's have a look how it actually works. So on a line like this, I can simply, you know, hit S space for stretch. Now if I select all the line, which is technically, if I hit escape, it's made of, you know, 3 grips. We're going to talk about grips very soon. Endpoint, endpoint, and midpoint, let's say. So if I hit S space and select all of them and hit the space, and then it's just going to be just a simple move, you know. S space. Now if I select only that edge, which is that point, and hit space to finish the selection, it will ask me for a base point wherever you want, let's say here, and I can increase the length of that by 100 or by 1,000, whatever you want. So again, select S space. Now select this edge and then finish the selection by hitting space. Now let me click anywhere I like as a base point, and then I can move my hand to the left. Actually I will really, if I do that, gonna, you know, like, you know, squash the line, squash the geometry. So I just return to F8 to get more orthographic way, so I can get this object to be decreased in length by, you know, a specific value, or freely like that. So again, if I select this guy again, if I select this point and this point, it's gonna cause the entire edge, or the width, or the length, sorry, of the scale to increase. So let's go S space and S space. Select those two lines, so those two points and the midpoint. So this line will move again, while those guys will just extend. Anyway, finish selecting object, specify whatever you want as a base point, and then move your hand so I can increase the length of that rectangle by, let's say, 200, as you can see. Again, S space, I'm gonna select those two, you know, all the south elevation, so 2 points and the midpoint of it, and hit the space to finish selection. I can drag that whole thing down or up. If you select just this point, it's gonna cause, you know, like a distortion in it in a specific way you like. It's almost nothing gonna do to the circle, so forget about it. Now how you get this interesting is when you work on a plan. So for a boundary, before we go on plan, let's select objects, select this guy. So technically this end, and the mid, so all this will increase in length. So this will move, those will extend. Same thing with this, I stretch this point so the dimension will goes with me. Hit space to finish the selection, specify the base point, and then move your hand to the right with a 200 and then space. Don't forget ortho on. Now you increase this with a 600. I can do the same thing here. Stretch, take this line like that, exactly like that, and then space wherever you want the base point and increase it, let's say 100, and hit space. Now that's nice. So if I go offset and I give a 5, and you know, not really, let's say 20. Yep. So if I did this again, if you remember, and create, you know, the walls that I have, now I can stretch this guy as a plan again together, doing this. See, 100. Beautiful. Otherwise you will be in the trouble of using move, push that 100, and then fillet again. Kind of a boring business if you don't know how to, you know, use the stretch command properly. More things to consider is when you know, use a window or have a window as a part of your work, like this. So if we trim that, see, now I can just move the window all like this, like another 50, see, without, or 20, without the need to redraw, or I can just make it bigger by let's say 50. See, really beautiful. I can move all that together 100 without affecting the window, or I can move the window goes bigger by 100 like that. It depends, it depends on how you actually, which part or which edge you can select. Select it all like this to make it move, or select part of it to increase or decrease the space. As you can see, that command will be really powerful command if you excel in it. Grips, again, if you select the object, I already explained it almost here, that's the grips. It allows you to move, to stretch, to rotate, you know, the object. You can even move if you select the midpoint like that, without the actual needs to use commands. Each object might have a different grip, so the rectangle have this is, you know, like in the edge, like allow you to increase the whole north or south or east, or distort it like such. Circle, on the other hand, can have, you know, center, which allow you to move if you select it, or the quadrant to allow you to increase or decrease the radius. That's about it, guys. we're gonna upload soon another lecture to show you some more practical example of how to deal and how to combine those commands in a good exercise. I wish that you find this video useful. Thank you very much and have a good day.